What's up, nerds? It's Havoc, and I finally got for you all the long-awaited heavy weapons battle group guide, or the how-to heavy weapons. This is the last of the new battle groups that Relic released with the 2.0 anniversary update. And honestly, I've been trying to figure out how to play with this for weeks, and I think I've really nailed down the composition, the strategy that has worked pretty well, pretty consistently for me. And in this game, I'm going to break it down for you all against our favorite, the beloved Reakly, on the new map Langres, which was also one of the new maps released in 2.0 anniversary update. This is the only one that I haven't made a video on yet, so it's nice. We got a little bit of variety in this game for you guys. So I'm going to talk about the macro, the micro, and break this game down for you all. So starting with, you'll notice I started with 2 scouts into the Jeep opener. The reason for this, and I've been getting comfortable with it on both against DAK and against Wehrmacht. This is kind of a must-have, I think, against Wehrmacht at the moment because of the power of the cloak MG spam that we're seeing. With access to the Jeep Commander, it gives you the ability to play around those machine guns throughout the game as long as you can keep the Jeep alive. And then obviously upgrading your scouts with the flares is also going to help you spot those out and play around them as well. The reason why I found it to be pretty good as well against DAK is it's a great anti-tempo build composition because the Jeep really helps you kill the momentum of the early game Bersaglieri just running around and taking everything from you. And also you can use it for our purposes here, which you can see I'm actually denying this West +10 fuel. So I have some feelings about Langres at the moment. I kind of feel like Langres is a little bit favoring of the south side. This fuel is actually quite close to the south base. It's kind of equivalent to this fuel, but I do feel like this +10 favors the south player a little bit more than the north player. But anyways, that's besides the point. Enough talking about the map. Sorry, we're going to break down the gameplay here. So we went for 2 scout Jeep opener. Jeep focused on harassing the +10 fuel to slow down the momentum of our opponent as much as possible. We're also using it to absorb damage, chip away at these Bersaglieri while we get to our second rifleman. After the second rifleman, previously I was going third rifleman, but we decided to swap that out in favor of an early engineer, which we'll talk about when we get to it. So we did some chipping away at these Bersaglieri, forcing them off now with the fresh rifleman, closing the gap in here, pushing him off the left-hand side +10 fuel again with the Jeep. Opening that up to create some space in the middle for the rifleman to capture these VPs. We're also decapturing this south fuel point. Now, hearing his bike, I wanted to call it, you guys probably heard there while I was, maybe you heard me, or heard while I was yapping in the fog of war, the bike zipping through this area. I heard it coming. And so the other thing that you were wanting to do with the Jeep in the early game is just assassinate this bike. The bike can really tilt the game in favor of the DAK player very quickly with this tracer marking ability. Makes your squads a lot easier for enemy troops to hit, and this is just going to flip all your engagements towards the DAK player. So killing this is like #1 priority in the early game, specifically for the Jeep. That's like all you should be focusing on, trying to kill this. And like I mentioned earlier, you know, harassing your opponent's troops from range. Nice thing about going engineer at this point is even if I've used my automatic repairs on my Jeep, the self-repair, I'm able to bring in the engineer to help keep this thing topped up and active. And it's perfect against Bersaglieri because the Bersaglieri don't have any snares, so you can get really in their face and really aggressive on them. and not take any manpower bleed, which is really nice. Because that's usually the biggest problem with fighting Bersaglieri in the early game is they're really good at long range, and they can kind of just kite you around, force you off, and then sprint around the map and vacuum up the territory. So you can see in most engagements, and I've talked about this before, the best way to lead into engagements in the early game with the Jeep is run in with the Jeep first. Close the gap with the Jeep first. Let the Jeep take the opening volley from your opponent, then close in with the rifleman. In this case, my riflemen are pretty weak, but I can see a mid-range engagement here, which is going to be favorable for the rifleman. So I'm just going to park them in the green cover and let the Jeep do the bullying and try to force him out of position. And then that's going to allow me to eventually capitalize. I actually didn't drive in on the PG because I was a little bit afraid of the snares. But you can see, like, he's kind of been deterred from pushing in here because of the Jeep, which is kind of nice. But now, you know, with him committing pretty much all of his troops here, I was just making sure I could secure this building with the scout. And then once he rounds this corner with the bursts, I'm gonna get away. Again, you know, continuing to play very wide on the map. That's the other nice thing about this composition is you have a lot of units, but they're very cheap units. And so it creates a situation where you're not over investing manpower in different areas of the map, but you're still able to play wide. Getting aggressive here with the rifleman on the cutoff. Now, I want to talk about the Jeep veterancy. So you have a couple of options when it comes to the Jeep veterancy. You have capture territory, and then you have, I believe it's called support platform or resupply platform, something like that. That's the other option. Anyway, there's capture territory, which is self-explanatory. It allows your Jeep to start capturing. And then you have the weapon or the resupply variant. And the resupply variant can be good if you're floating a lot of munitions in the early game and you happen to need a machine gun before building your weapon support center, or you don't want to invest as much manpower into a machine gun and you can instead invest more munitions and pay a little bit less on the manpower side. In this case, I went for the capture territory because I wanted to be able to contest points that were being captured by the Bersaglieri. If I'm playing against a lot of PGs, I probably won't go for this because there's a pretty high probability that I'm going to lose it. And the other nice thing about the other Vet 1 option on the Jeep is you can self-repair in combat. So it creates these scenarios where you can actually bait your opponent into thinking they're about to kill your Jeep. And then you pop the repair in combat, and that just puts them in an unfavorable position, trying to commit and get the kill. A little advanced maneuver. Just wanted to call that out. We're focusing on the weaker targets here with the rifleman and the Jeep, keeping the Jeep at a distance because it's relatively low. Poking away on the right-hand side with the scout. Meanwhile, again, playing wide, capturing this with the engineer. Probably going to plant a mine here shortly after capturing that with the engineer. Getting up my medical tent at this point, and next I'm going to be going into an M3 armor personnel carrier, and then I'll talk about how that ties into heavy weapons shortly. You can see here, still sitting on 2 riflemen. This is very comfortable for me at this point. The scouts, the engineer, and the captain give me plenty of anti-infantry fighting power and map presence in the meantime. You can see Reakly coming to capture this +10, tries to turn around. He actually runs into my mine, which is great. The bike is off the field now. I only have to focus on and worry about his infantry. And now the clock is on for Reakly because my riflemen are going to outscale the Bersaglieri. It happens around Vet 2. And so he needs to apply a lot of pressure in order to come back and get that momentum that frankly, he just up for style, and it works well for him. But we're having really good resource control. We've got 2 +10s to 1 at the moment. I'm using the Jeep to kind of guard this far side of the map and keeping the pressure here on this is the fuel cutoff or his +10 or the natural fuel here. And now I'm going for my M3. And this is where the really like awesome part of the heavy weapons battle group comes in. So M3 is going to come out. We immediately went for M3 and exchangeable parts. So I'm just going to talk about the battle group options here. So my order of selection, generally speaking, is I'm going for assault carriers and then I'm going for exchangeable parts. I don't go half-track strong points. I don't think it's good in 1v1. This is way, way better because it allows you to get way more value out of your half-tracks. Generally, by the time you get your M3 out, the first M3, you're going to have 2 CPs, so you can go straight to this. And what I like to do is, as long as you have selected exchangeable parts, your first upgrade, your first purchasable upgrade, will only take 8 seconds to construct. That is very different than if you don't have this, your first upgrade will take 45 seconds. But if you already have this selected, you'll still have to pay the munition cost for it, but your first conversion will only take 8 seconds, which means I can get active on the field with this quad right away, like ASAP. And this is perfect for this point in the game. I don't want to go GMC because if you look at his composition, GMC doesn't provide me a ton of value. It doesn't really fight the infantry very well. The only thing I really can hit is this this 250 with the Panzerjäger in it that I don't know he has yet. And later on, the Flak-Vierling. But neither of those things are out because I've had a very strong early game. And even if they were, the quad provides a lot more universal value than the GMC at this point because I can also fight his infantry with it at long range. I've seen a lot of people complain about how weak the quad is. I could not disagree more, honestly. For how early this unit arrives and how much damage it does, specifically while standing still, it is an incredibly high value, very consistent damage source, unlike something like the Greyhound is a lot more volatile. The quad is exceptional, and it really helps me add a layer on the pressure and build tempo in this early game. So we're getting it on the field. We're going to bring it straight to the front. I've actually spotted out his Panzerjäger here. I'm just zipping away with the Jeep. And I can see he's going for, looks like he's going to go for my cutoff here. I'm fully prepared for this, and I want you guys to pay attention to this interaction. This is super important. So, the quad, and likewise the DAK Flak-Vierling, have a moving burst penalty. What that means is that it's only going to fire about half as many rounds while moving as it would when standing still. This is a really important detail when you're fighting something like the Panzerjäger 250, because if you're moving, you're only going to fire half as many rounds at this 250, and there's a chance that he's going to be able to chase you for much longer and potentially kill your half-track compared to just standing still. So in this situation, I just stand my ground. I've got my vehicle focus on, so I'm not going to change targets. I see him coming. My engineer is walking up behind the quad to repair any damage that I take from the Panzerjäger 250 while he's approaching me. I'm fully ready for this, right? So watch what happens. Look at that burst duration, dude. I literally took it from 100% to 0% health, right? And I haven't even taken any damage yet. So that's the power of stationary. Remember, I said it's so important. Stationary quad has way better accuracy and way better burst duration. This is how you want to use the quad. You can't use this thing like the Greyhound. You can't drive around, fire it on the move, etc. That's the main difference. But when it's standing still, this thing is an absolute menace. So now, like, I'm pretty comfortable taking this fight. You know, I'm going to push in with my engineers here. I'm going to take a little bit of damage from the Jaeger, but, you know, I'm not too worried. Like, he's not gonna kill this, right? There we go. We forced him away with the quad. We killed the 250. Now he has no means to transport his troops up to my quad and threaten it anymore. Now is the perfect time for you to go for your third rifleman. Or if you want, and your opponent's doing a lot of blobbing, you could go for a machine gun at this point. But I do like rifles. It's a little bit more versatile. And we're totally content to build a rifleman this late because we are soon going to invest in bars, and that's going to help make up the gap in veterancy that we've created for building this at like 8.5 minutes it is. So again, playing very wide, focusing on, you know, both of the core fuel points. Staying active over here with the Jeep, right? We've got our commander upgrade. This is also, by the way, the highly underrated ability. I talked about this in my 2v2 video, but this thing, giving the map hacks, which is similar to what the 221 can do, or the 254 from the DAK, gives you a ton of intel, and it's perfect for this kind of situation where I can see what kind of unit is coming through the fog of war. And that's going to allow me to decide with the Jeep, am I going to stick around and kind of poke and prod and try to retain control of this +10? Or if it's like a vehicle, I'm just going to back away because I can see it coming a mile away, right? So you can see here, flak veerling, we can hear it's on the field. Just getting into the green cover position. Gonna bring my quad over, captain, both my scouts. Well, taking quite a bit of damage here from the flak veerling. I'm just using the line of sight blocker to make it so that he can't fire at me directly. Just so you guys know, this thing is awful at firing like attack ground, like through hedges and bushes and stuff. I think he tries to do it here, but like, no, actually he's hitting me directly, never mind. But if you can ever force your opponent to try to attack ground with this thing, it doesn't work very well. A little bit of micro on my part, going for the +10 here. Quad, you know, I'm with your quad, and this, so Reakly knows this about the flak veerling too. The flak veerling will beat the M16, but it's like a very soft counter. They're actually very close in terms of the DPS that they deal to each other. So you'll notice, like, what I'm doing here is I'm engaging him at max range, using stationary mode to maximize my burst duration. You can see we're just like trading blows here, trading damage. I'm not really afraid of him, you know. He doesn't have Vet 1 yet. Vet 1 is where this thing starts to get a little bit scary. But pre-Vet 1, you know, I'm pretty comfortable to just like keep the pressure on him, keep engaging him. And then you'll notice here, I actually swapped to the GMC quickly. And you can do this like at any point. And this is really the optimal time to do it. Once your opponent gets their flak veerling out, convert your quad to the GMC so that you can kill this thing. Hopefully you've got Vet 1 already on it at this point. And I go for target weak point here. The follow-up. Don't manage to get that shot off, so we end up having to back away. But the idea was there, right? And now that I have a M3 that already has Vet 1 because of how I used it with the quad, now I've got access to target weak point, which is going to make me a lot more confident in engagements with the flak veerling. Because I can use this round to stun it, which is going to allow me to set up a subsequent shot, maybe potentially close with the rifleman and get a grenade off. By the way, I'm very late on my grenade package. You should definitely get it earlier. When you're playing against DAK especially. I think, yeah, just capture this +10 on this side. I'm retreating my engineer back to base so I can repair up my GMC and get it back on the field here. Don't want to take too much bleed. Like, we have to be really careful about bleeding too much because what we're building towards is eventually the Pershing. So essentially, guys, this build, what it turns into, I haven't got it yet, is we're playing for early game weapon support center with our first half track. Sometimes I build 2 if I'm facing like multiple light vehicles from my opponent, but usually like the 1 is very comfortable for me. And we're gonna invest in infantry support center to help our riflemen scale until we can just go straight for the Pershing tank. And then we use that to either close out the game or catapult our way into tier 4. in this game, this is a bit of a shorter game, but I wanted to highlight everything leading up to it because really, this is the most difficult phase of the game with the heavy weapons battle group specifically. Again, you know, we're leaning mostly left side here with the Jeep. We don't want to go where the fighting is the fiercest. We just want to play the outside of the map and try to harass and control this +10 fuel. Captain here using the boost to bring in my rifleman squad more quickly because I know he's got a PG over here. There he appears around the corner. Closing on him with the rifleman. Staying behind the hedge because I'm a little afraid of the flak veerling. There we can see I've spotted out the flak veerling. I'm going to run for the hard point in the building with my captain. Jeep keeping the distance because again I'm a little bit afraid of the flak veerling here. But he throws a well-timed grenade, gets some good damage on the captain. I'm just going to pull away from this engagement. Focus my way back on the right-hand side. Evidently, Reakly, he was a little distracted. Wasn't really paying attention here. I'm keeping my distance here with the GMC. He wants to keep his Panzerjäger on the field because he knows that if he retreats it, it leaves his flak veerling susceptible to a dive from my GMC. And now we also see that he's got a Caro here. So what I'm going to be thinking about is a couple things. At this point, you have a few options. Number one, you could get a second GMC. It's really not a bad idea at this point. The GMCs can really handle these Caro light tanks quite easily if there's two of them. I think it's like 2 shots from each in order to kill it. You can see here I'm teching grenades because I'm anticipating, okay, he's got a Carl and he's got a flak veerling. If I know Reakly, he's going to look for an opportunity to dive. Because when you have the vehicle advantage or the vehicle tempo I talk about a lot, trading out vehicles so that your opponent, like I've only got one. If he kills one of my vehicles and then, he has a vehicle and I don't because he killed it. Like if he loses a vehicle, I lose a vehicle, he's up because he's got the priority vehicle, right? Still on the field. And so I'm gonna have to rebuild. So it's a good idea to try to match however many vehicles you're facing. I think more than 2 GMCs might be a little bit excessive, but it's also gonna depend on like how much fuel you've got. See here, he's thinking about, I use the target weak point here to deter the dive from the Caro. He forces me away with the machine gun, bringing my other troops back out on the field. Pushes his Caro into my M3. I hit it with a snare, finish it off with the GMC. But he's still committed, right? He's still going in. Try to land a second shot here on the flak veerling, but he does trade it out. So that is a win for him. Now, I did burn more resources by killing the Caro from Reakly. But now I am down a vehicle, so I need to replace that quickly. Otherwise, he's going to start using the flak veerling to just totally terrorize me. He's going to be able to push all my infantry off the field. Again, maintaining control of the VPs, paying attention to the VPs, super important. I'm going to rebuild my GMC here.
Reports of enemy movement near our victory point.
Taking control of the hard points here. Reakly's doing a good job just hiding from line of sight. Capturing the VP to stop the VP bleed. Want to keep these nice and stocked up. Because really, guys, all you're trying to do is essentially build up a half-decent composition, scale your riflemen, and stall for Pershing. GMCs have an exceptional late game. Because of target weak point, they also have high penetration. It's a perfect support unit to back up the Pershing as you get super aggressive with it to close the game out. That is really the goal of this composition, is like we're making our way to the Pershing late game. There's a couple options that we may consider on our path to that, which I'll talk about as we get a little bit deeper into the game. Again, by the way, I want to call this out, guys. So if you ever see your opponent dive you with a vehicle, watch the path that they take and remember it, because there's a really high probability that they're going to go there again. with either with a vehicle or with troops. We call those high traversal like areas, right? So with his flak veerling, he actually dove his way across this field, drove through here, and picked up the kill on my M3. I think it's over here. And I'm expecting that like he's probably going to make an aggressive play on me again on my cutoff at some point. So I'm going to plant a mine here. This is a very defensive mine. You know, it's only going to work if he happens to dive me. Because I'm playing a bit more of a defensive game in terms of my vehicle usage, this is the perfect, you know, mine to support that, right? And I'm probably going to think about planting another one maybe over here, potentially over here or here. But like these areas are probably pretty essential. And then maybe this road as well is a good spot for a mine. EMC's back on the field now. We've upgraded it. Gonna pull back my riflemen that are getting pretty low. Again, he was bullying me out with the flak veerling, so I'm just gonna back away with that as well. Gonna plant another mine. This is another great mine position. This point is very commonly traversed by vehicles that are coming across the field to this side of the map. Kind of probing here, looking for his flak veerling. Gonna swing my GMC in here and get an opening shot. Get a good tick of damage there. Not gonna go too deep. You know, playing reactively with the GMCs is the way to go. Leading with the riflemen. Want to pull my scout away. Don't want to lose that. It's important to keep those for capture power. Back out on the field. Hitting something with the GMC, and here we go. He's caught me out with the Panzerjäger. GMC is in pursuit, and then he hits our mine. The reason why he took so much damage is because of the Captain Mark vehicle. I wanted to mention, like, I have been going Mark vehicle pretty much every single game now with my captain. With the introduction of the KT and so many heavy tanks on the field, the value of this in the late game cannot be understated. It really takes situations that could be unfavorable instead of in terms of vehicle engagements, and allows you to kill them very quick. Like look at the stats on this. So takes 25% additional damage, 50% easier to hit, which means you're rarely gonna miss even while moving with a lot of vehicles. And then also in 25% incoming weapon penetration. It's going to make it a lot easier to get through it with get through the armor of the vehicle through the front. Obviously with Carls we don't really have that problem, but you can see here the combination of the Mark and running into the mine set him up to just be finished off by the GMC here. And now that's the second Carl that he's, you know, sacrificed trying to dive me and get the vehicle tempo that has not worked for him. Wanted to call out this maneuver here. Again, utility of the captain. Like I know I talked about MSC, but I just think ISC is still just way more competitive for no other reason than just the value of the captain. The captain is what I would really like to see is like the ability. Maybe ISC gives you captain for free, but you can build the captain for the 150 manpower that it takes. From even if you go for one of the other weapons support centers, I should say, so like WSC or ASC. Anyway, so what we did here was we fired off the grenade, we waited till the suppression hit the rifleman, and then we immediately triggered the flanking maneuver sprint to allow us to follow up on this great grenade that we landed on him. We're not gonna kill the MG34 here, but like, you know, if you get a good damage on the grenade, it can happen. And I want to pause here and talk about like part of the reason of part of the value of keeping the scouts alive, especially at this stage in the game. These guys get some crazy capture speed veterancy. You can see here. So 50% extra capture speed. The neutralized speeds in this game are already quite high. So being able to secure territory quickly, it's going to allow your riflemen to focus on combat while your scouts are cleaning up and picking up the territory in their wake of destruction. And that's exactly what you want, right? You want to be as active as possible with your rifle, and you want to be in combat all the time so that you're getting veterancy on them. And the scouts are going to get veterancy from taking up the territory behind them. You can also, you can set up rifleman pushes with the flares, with the smoke grenades. So having 2 of these scale throughout the late game is great. In terms of veterancy options, generally speaking, I'm going for smoke drop against DAK. And I've actually been using the stealth, I don't know, prone mode. I don't know what to call it, but basically they go cam mode and they start crawling around, and that is good when you're playing against the camoed MGs from the Wehrmacht, because sometimes you can kind of run into them with the scouts while they're invisible. Anyway, but yeah, that's some of the value in the scouts. I'm a little concerned that he's going to dive me again with another light vehicle, so I decide to get out a bazooka squad at this point. I wouldn't usually do this. Usually I would go for another GMC, but the reason why we went for the Zook here at this point is because we're actually getting decently close to the CPs that we need for the Pershing, and I'm nowhere near the fuel. So I kind of want to avoid spending fuel if I can. I want to call out a little bit earlier. I did go for advanced logistics. Usually I'm getting advanced logistics after I've got to the point where I'm like feeling confident about my vehicle situation, and I've got bars already, bars and grenades. So in terms of teching, I'm usually going either nades bars or bars nades, depending on what kind of DAK composition I'm up against. If it's vehicle heavy, I'm going to go nades first. If it's infantry heavy like this, you got Bersaglieri and PGs to deal with, then bars are probably a better first choice. But not before your M3. M3 needs to come out before bars, because you need that vehicle timing and the tempo that and having the quad. So anyway, so we got logistics earlier on that's helping us deal with the bleed that we're having to incur. You can see like we're still down in terms of infantry kills, and this is very typical for a US against DAK matchup. If the kills are even, the DAK player is doing something wrong. Trying to set up for a barrage here, forcing him away with the grenade. I just want to keep him off my cutoff here. Keeping the bazooka in a very defensive position because I'm afraid he might have another Caro here. But again, look, we're still playing very wide, right? We're not getting overly concentrated on this area. A lot of health damage on the scout, but we're pretty safe to back away there. Just trying to continue to secure the cutoff. Scout and Rifleman contesting the right-hand side fuel. Rifleman and Zook pushing up the middle. I think it's a good idea to support your Zooks. Have the Zooks come in behind whatever your frontline unit is. In this case, it's the Rifleman. And at this point, because I've recognized that I'm not going to have the fuel I need for the Pershing by the time I get the CPs for it, this is when I bring in the 50 cals. Now, it might be valuable if your opponent is blobbing a lot. I would get this earlier. But Reakly, he's pretty mobile. He's pretty all over the place. His units are pretty spread out, so I don't really feel the need to go for it. You can just use the base 30 cal as well for a bit. I want the 50 cal for a couple reasons. Number one, because the suppression and the damage on it is better. So it's going to scale better with veterancy. It's also going to deal a little bit of chip damage to the flak Virling if I manage to catch it out from like this building position. And again, like I said, I'm nowhere near the fuel that I need for the Pershing yet, so I'm safe to spend like 1 CP on getting this 50 caliber upgrade on the machine gun. Catches me out here with the Panzerjäger. Good shots in there, but he's going to be forced away. Rifleman actually just nuked that Panzerjäger. I don't know how I managed to kill that, but that was very lucky. Hitting the flak Virling here with a stun shot to open. Thinking about closing the gap, but not going to overcommit here. I just want to let him know that I'm there and keep the pressure off my infantry. I actually missed micro. Yeah, VP. Trying to come over here and contest this area better. A little late on the retreat on the scout there. We end up losing that. That's unfortunate. It's okay. Not a huge issue. Follow up with a grenade on the MG34, chasing it down, forcing him off. We're applying great VP pressure at this point. Force the Panzer pile off this north. Again, you know, keeping perspective on the whole map. I talk about this a lot, but I gotta tell you guys, with the USF, this is the most important faction to master this concept for, because if you're trying to fight Axis head on, you will lose. They're better at long range, they're better together. You want to pull them apart into several smaller micro engagements where your riflemen with the bars can close the gap and actually deal damage in their faces. Because if you try to run at them when there's a big group, you're just going to get alpha striked. You're going to take way too much damage on the approach, and your riflemen are not going to be able to get into the effective range that they need. So in this case, we're spreading them all out all over the map. Now, there are some times where you're going to want to make concerted pushes, of course. You know, you find an opportune moment, you catch a unit out of position, whatever that is, right? But generally speaking, you want to make sure that you're playing wide so you're getting the most value out of the riflemen when they're able to engage your opponent's units one-on-one where they're going to be strongest. You have it. So again, I've seen him run through this point several times, so seeing that this is a commonly traversed point for him, this is also a really important principle to think about when planting mines, especially, I consider this an aggressive mine because it's more in his territory than mine. You need to get your opponent's attention somewhere else so he doesn't catch you planting the mine. So where I might normally not push in like this, for fear of running into the flak fearling, which is pretty close by as we can see, I'm doing it on purpose. I'm drawing his attention to like, hey, look, I'm going to kill your AT gun. And I'm using that opportunity to plant this aggressive mine that hopefully he's not going to discover. And then meanwhile, we've got these guys, you know, they're capturing the far side. We're going to decapture fuel. Zook squad's going to come and capture the point behind. We're getting the mine down. We did scare him away from the AT gun engagement. His flak fearling backed away as well. The mine here on this right-hand side. 50 cal's up here to support my GMC, so he can't push into me with the Panzerjäger. He hits my mine that I just planted. We're gonna run in and close the gap quickly here with the GMC, and then we get the killing blow. Now we're in really, really good shape. CPs are exactly where we need them to be for the Pershing, so we're just gonna wait on that. Secure as much fuel as possible. Using the 50 cal to deter the push onto Eastern VP here. Good stun grenade. I'm actually just going to retreat because I took a lot of health damage. I don't want to drop this to, you know, another Arrow or God knows what. Did manage to force him off this side. I'm very content with that engagement. I'm going to pull these guys back to base and start saving manpower because I'm going to need 700 to get the Pershing out. Denying the decapture here in the middle with the rifleman, keeping the VP pressure on. He's actually getting pretty close now. Hitting the machine gun with the GMC. Again, this unit's amazing. Like, it's just so versatile. So much value out of these over the course of the whole game. But he actually catches me out here with the Caro. So, this engagement I want to talk about. I just fired a round at him. Do not use target weak point when your opponent... I've talked about this in another video when you're fighting a bike. Do not activate this while your opponent is driving on a 45-degree angle to your vehicle. You're just going to get kited. It's never going to get the round off. Okay? You have to micro the vehicle and wait for the opportunity so that he's leveling out and you can get that shot off. So I'm going to slow this engagement down so you guys can watch it because it's super important. So he's pushing in, he's driving at a 45-degree angle here. Look, he's driving at a 45-degree angle. Reakly knows he knows the stuff, right? He knows the secret sauce. Driving at a 45-degree angle is difficult for casemate vehicles to deal with because it resets their aim time every time the chassis of the vehicle has to pivot. So what I have to do is use the speed of the half track to create distance and make it so that I've pivoted enough so that I've got a firing arc that I can hit him no matter where he goes, right? So what that means is I'm backing away. I can see he's going this way, so I'm going to back up this direction, okay? So we're backing up See, look, we're rotating the chassis back towards this GMC here. We're leveling out. Now that I've got him in front of me, and I'm about to fire, and like I can tell, because you could tell approximately like how long it takes between shots for vehicles. The best time for you to use an ability is right before the next round is ready to fire, because that way it's not gonna fuck with the aim time. It's not gonna slow you down. It's not gonna bug out like it usually does with these abilities. You're actually gonna be able to fire it off, and it's gonna give me an opportunity to potentially win this engagement and kill it. So, backing up, we trigger the target weak point. Fire the shot because he's driving straight at us. Back up to create distance. Again, keeping the gun facing him, super important. Do not want to angle yourself too much for fear of losing the shot. Follow-up shot comes in. While all this is happening, by the way, again, keeping perspective on the whole map, he was pushing in with his AT gun. We closed and collapsed onto the AT gun here with the rifleman, wiped it. Trying to get that final shot in. But he manages to get the shot off before we get that last shot in. So we could have won that engagement with a little bit of a faster reload there. But I wanted to highlight that engagement specifically so you guys can see how to use the GMC in those sort of circumstances. Now, we've cleared the AT gun. I can hear he's coming back. He's coming back with the car. I don't know why he's not going this way, but he's coming back. So I'm going to grab this AT gun, make sure I plant it down here. Engage the PG. He notices I have his AT gun, but it's too late. He clears out his AT gun. Not a huge deal for us. I thought he was going to try to crew it back, but he didn't. He just threw a grenade on top of it. Just going to retreat everything. That was the MG34 that I stole from him, but it looks like he got it back. 50 cal is going to cover the approach here. I'm trying to finish off the machine gun with the bazooka, but he does manage to steal it away. Contesting the VP. Again, continuously applying pressure on the VPs. Playing wide. Keeping my opponent all over the map. This is the way to win your US games.
We have a surplus of command points.
Getting up to... Now, I'll talk... So we're getting... You know, you guys can kind of tell here. We're getting close to the end. Pershing is your win condition. When this thing comes out, you need to go on the offensive. Chances are, like 9 times out of 10, your opponent is not going to have a comparable vehicle to the Pershing. And frankly, nothing can outduel this thing. This thing is an absolute beast in a 1v1 situation. So you need to go hunting for your opponent's priority vehicles. Which means go and find their most expensive vehicle and try to kill it with this thing as soon as it hits the field. If your opponent has no vehicles, look for an opportunity to deal, to pick off an isolated unit on the outside of the map and chase it back to base and wipe it. You know, deal chip damage to your opponent at long range. But the best thing to do is use the shock value of the Pershing hitting the field, because this thing will beat any tank that Axis has at this point in the game. Or Reakly, you know, he doesn't actually have much at this point. But even against the Tiger, like the Pershing is cooking. The Pershing is very comfortable in a Tiger matchup. It is faster. It has a faster reload speed. It has access to the Vet 1 HVAP, which we'll talk about shortly. Anyway, your goal is to close the game out once the Pershing comes out. And the reason why you want to do it then is because the longer the game goes, the more uncomfortable it's going to get, and the more counters your opponent is eventually going to get out for this thing. If you're playing against Wehrmacht, they're going to start building martyrs or building more martyrs. They're probably going to have Jägerstrecks or God knows what else. Really quickly here, I also want to talk about Gallant Stand versus Rapid Reposition. I think in general, this is probably better if you have more team weapons, at least 2 machine gun teams. This game I only got 1 because Reakly built so many vehicles, but many games I've been building 2. My composition has looked almost exactly like this, except instead of the bazooka, I have a second machine gun or a second 50 cal. Either or is good. Anyway, we got the Pershing on the field. I know he's got no vehicles, or if he does have a vehicle, it's just going to be a Caro. So I'm looking to close out the game here. And really, I kind of feel like at this point, it's mostly just style points that I've got this thing out. Just roasting, and like I told you guys, like once your riflemen hit Vet 2, you've got double bars on them. You're absolutely cooking these Bersaglieri. They're just not up to snuff with riflemen at Vet 2 or Vet 3. Vet 3 even better. But yeah, Vet 2 gives you the extra weapon accuracy, which just makes these guys super dangerous. And that's what you're playing for over the course of the game, right? So we're just closing on his team weapons here. Pershing, we don't give a fuck, man. We're going straight in. He's got one AT gun. There's nothing he can field that would be a danger to me. And we're closing out here with the Pershing, just for style points. And that's it. That is the essential composition for US heavy weapons battle group. I'm not gonna lie, guys. It's kind of tough to pilot. There's a lot of different units doing a lot of different things. The Jeep requires really impeccable micro in the early game. It requires a lot of attention. I would highly encourage control groups for that purpose. But it is very strong, and it gives you the space that you need in the early game, especially against Bersaglieri, especially against cloaked MGs. Your goal is to slow your opponent down as they're getting onto the field, to give you space to breathe and to deal chip damage to those units, so that once your riflemen hit the field, they have some weaker units that they can fight from better positions. And start winning engagements early on. And that game was a culmination of a snowball of many small favorable things that went my way that culminated in pulling out the Pershing, right? So quickly, just to wrap the comments on the battle group itself. So I like the M5. I just don't think it's competitive really in a 1v1 setting. I think there's a lot of indirect counter to it. It's a lot of liability. The Pershing is just too valuable to pass up. So like I mentioned, my general path is I'm opening with assault carriers into exchangeable parts. We use this to get a really quick quad that we're eventually going to convert back into a GMC later on. There's actually a really clever maneuver that you can do where you start the production of the GMC, then you go into an engagement with the quad, and then it will actually convert to the GMC mid-combat to allow you to kind of like follow up on maybe some initial damage that you did with the quad. It's kind of interesting. Some cool tech there. Then you're going for the Pershing. And if you have the fuel for it, just beeline straight to it after getting your bars, your nades, your logistics for your riflemen, your infantry squads. If you don't have the fuel quite, as you're getting there, or your opponent is fielding like big blobs in the early game, just go for the 50 cals. 1 CP is not a big deal. These things are super powerful. They're an even better version of the 30 cal. And mixing a couple of these in, once you've got your triple rifleman with bars out, your infantry is going to be super formidable. And between mines, nades, and the GMCs, you basically have all of the tools that you need to get to your Pershing, which is going to come out around the 20-minute mark. If you are playing aggressively, taking lots of engagements. And your opponent's not going to have much more than like maybe their first, maybe their second tier 4 vehicle by this point. So, yeah. And then using, if the game's stretching out, just use the Pershing to leapfrog into tier 4. And then you can get, Hellcats or Bulldozer or whatever it is you need to deal with what your opponent's got at that point. And then in terms of your last option here between Gallant Stand and Rapid Reposition, both of these are good. I think Rapid Reposition is better if you have multiple machine gun squads. If you only have one, Gallant Stand is probably better. And this is also good if you happen to like steal an opponent's AT gun or something like this. This ability is free. So as long as your team weapon is not in a compromising position and you have some units screening it, this could be really powerful. The extra accuracy on the machine gun, the rate of fire on the AT gun, both very good options. And then for the late game, Black Dragon, if your opponent is playing very defensive, very campy, and you need to use this to dislodge them from a position. But generally speaking, bolstered weapon teams to, again, complement what is already very strong 50 cal team is going to be very good as well. So that's it. I hope you guys learned something. I hope you enjoyed the video. Appreciate all of the new audience members, all the new subscriptions in the last couple days. It's great to see the game getting the attention I think it finally is deserving of. You know, launch was a little bit dicey, but I think we're in a really good spot now, and people seem to be having fun. So I appreciate you guys. I appreciate the community, and you know, more videos to come, more how-to guides. I think what we'll do is we'll start to deviate into the other battle groups for each faction now. Now that I've got, you know, a starter guide for all the brand new ones. So leave a comment on which battle group you would like to see next, and you know, I'll make that a priority in my upcoming games, especially for like the highest, you know, upvoted. Try to prioritize that. I'm thinking Spec Ops next for USF. The other factions, you know, we'll talk about. But anyway, appreciate you all. Be well. See you, nerds.